Aloha everyone. My name is Tiare. I'm from Maui. Very fortunate to be here today. Big, huge mahalo to Hawaii Community College and Brother Eric and Kumukua for inviting me to today. And I just feel very blessed and grateful to be able to share our story and our struggles on Maui with all of you today. Fortunately, a few years ago, a few of my friends and I started the Aloha Aina Project. And what we wanted to do was create a way where we could start organizing events and concerts and marches to start raising awareness about the issues that was affecting our communities. And so what came out of the Aloha Aina Project was we had done a few concerts on Oahu, and we also organized the Aloha Aina Unity marches on Waikiki and in Lahaina. And that was kind of somewhat of the beginning of my path as a activist or agitator. Try to, be like, no, I want, can you call me like a community, engagement person? Not like, people like to characterize the activist as this radical, but as time evolved, I kind of just got so proud of being an activist. When you look up the definition of an activist, and you look up the history and the struggles that people had to go through, and when they took that step and became an activist and became a voice, some of the biggest accomplishments in the world came off of just a few people, whether it was civil rights or immigrant rights or women's rights.
But AMBs didn't stop you just because they were breaking the law. You have your constitutional and civil rights as a Native Hawaiian to do whatever you want to get your water back.
Absolutely.
Period.
Absolutely. And that was another funny situation that happened that day too, is we're in the river, and so they call the cops. DLNR comes, the cops come, the whole shebang, and so it's like us three girls and all the cops, and we're like, luckily, I've been down this road a few times, so I'm like dropping all my laws. Article 12, Section 7, PASH, like dropping all my laws, and they're like, oh, okay, we're not gonna, and some of them recognize me from some of the other protests, and they're like, oh, it's like, don't even. But yeah, it's funny, but you are right, and it's something, and that's why I say learn your rights, because we have so many state laws that protect us as Native Hawaiians,
That's right.
and we don't exercise them enough. And if we don't exercise them enough, then the state won't acknowledge it enough.
That's right.
So we as Kanaka need to really educate ourselves and do our research, because we are very well protected. And so, the system oftentimes doesn't work for us, it works against us. And in order for us to prove our worth and that the laws, to justify those laws, we have to go to court. And you look at like Kuleana lands. It's like, how much Kanaka, get $50,000 to $100,000 to fight one quiet title claim in court? Our Ohana, that's how we lost our land, because we couldn't fight the system. We just never had enough money. And it's just realizing that this system, sometimes it's a challenge. And that's why I always tell people to get involved in local political issues. I know it's something that is uncomfortable for a lot of our people, but on Maui, we were very successful in getting Uncle Alika Atai in, which was a huge winner for us. He now sits on the Water Resource County Council board, or what's it called, committee. He's the chair of that committee, which is a huge bonus for us. And then we have Kelly King, who is this environmental champion. But, I feel like for us, we need to get to the table. We need to get to the table. We cannot continue to let these guys make the decisions that they're making, and we need to find ways to infiltrate, even if it's just on like a community board or a commission or something. It's like infiltrating our voices in all of these different avenues that can help us progress as a people and help us put our rights at the table and help us put our needs in front of the table? Why is it that industrial agriculture has more priority over our lahui, over our kalo farmers, over just people who want to farm? Why is it that these industrial agriculture guys pay pennies for water, but our farmers paid, was it 400 times more than what they pay for stream water? That's not fair. And so that's the constant struggle that we've been dealing with. I mean, I'd like to hear more about what's going on in Kauai, so please enlighten me. I don't know if there's, I know there's Wailua.
Same thing, just the names have changed. It's not A and B, it's Grow Farm
And Waimea.
and KIUC.
And are people organizing behind it?
Oh, yeah.
If you can, and if you are compelled to get involved, hooey up and support those guys.
Mahalo so much for coming. Sister, it's heir apparent that literally you were talking about kapuna that have been on this fight for decades, now going on some 60, 80 years plus. Some of us here, 20 years plus. You know, once again, it's heir apparent that the trustee who is supposed to be managing and doing this is actually the one that's creating the dysfunction, you know, for the entire system. So how do you hold them accountable for their misdeeds? Because that's what's at the core of this. And you can't go then to the feds, because if a kingdom trying to do a sovereign thing, then you're running into a bigger fox in the hen house. So it's like one thing after another just cycling to make sure that you're never going to see nothing for a century or two later. So how do we, as a hui, and as Kanakas, Haoles, trying to help the kingdom give back and to make that restoration happen?
I think
How do we make that happen?
it's going to take time. I think now that our keiki are learning their history and learning their language, that we're like 1 to 2 generations away from being a true force when it comes to that aspect. But in the interim, I think it's important for us to huli this system that we're in, and fight all angles, push on that end and push in this end. But I think right now our keiki really, really need us to come together as a community and huli in 2018. Huli 2018.
I agree, and I would, the only thing I would add to that, Tiare, is maybe now is the time for a class action suit against the trustee by Native Hawaiians to get your civil and your constitutional rights back.
Absolutely. I know there's talk about some kind of lawsuit like that, but as you know, it's very, very costly.
With that in mind, thanks Don for bringing that up, because one thing that we're finding that we've noticed too is that these leases that are being appropriated somehow or another is literally taking away from even financial resources that should be going to DHHL and the Kanaka Maoles to be putting them back onto their aina. This is a loophole that they have then created. That's why they're going with these, you know, month-to-month, year-to-year, short-term for 27-year leases, because it's not until they get locked into a long-term lease, supposedly, that then the Kanakas get to finally start getting appropriations.
Yeah, and that's what's really scary about this EIS process, because now the DLNR is entertaining bids for this 30-year lease. And so far, the only people that are capable of taking on this type of lease is East Maui Irrigation A&B. I know on Kauai you guys have a co-op here, but for us a co-op would be devastating, because a co-op allows members to vote, and majority of the people in the upcountry district depend on the water for domestic use, which would overpower the kalo farmers in East Maui. So we're it's very scary. We've talked about, hey, maybe DHHL should try, because they have homesteads in Waihuli and in Kianai and Wailuanui, but it's a struggle. You know, I'm hoping that as a community that we can come up with a solution and go after that lease, because I personally think that it's very it would be devastating to our community to give it to A and B, especially the damage is done and it's time for change. I mean, like, desperately we need change. And, you know, if we're really gonna meet this food production goal and stuff, it's like, I'd rather have 100,000 more pounds of kalo on our plates than sugar or any of these other, you know, biofuel is great and all, but we should focus on opening up those lo'i first and restoring them and feeding our people. Yeah, if you guys get work days, you know, if you know of people that are trying to open up lo'i, put the kahea out. Get as much people as you can, because, you know, with lo'i restoration, the hard work is opening them up. But once you get them up and running, it's so much more easier. The hard work is cleaning out the hau and all the cane grass and stuff, but.
What we're seeing is a challenge in Wainiha. You know, there's a little bit of a ku'e effort right now in Wainiha, and that has to do with lo'i and making a stand for holding some of the last lo'i on that side of the river open. But their challenge is that the water has been redirected. You know, the money doesn't even work anymore, so they're having to do dry land kalo farming in the lo'i. And does that still count?
Dry land is better than no kalo.
That's right, you got that right.
And dry land just produces just as much kalo too.
Tiare, just to reiterate one thing, you mentioned AMB's going for a 30-year license. KIUC here is going for a 65-year license on Waialeale. And as Tim mentioned, they've got all these revocable permits. But in December of 2016, the board of Land and Natural Resources made a really good policy that if water is diverted from a stream and never any of it put back in that same stream, that it's a consumptive use. And almost all of those revocable permits are for non-consumptive use. So they don't apply. They're fraudulent, actually. The second thing is, if I haven't forgotten it, is that Kauai Springs versus Kauai Planning Commission 2002. It made it very clear that the trustee, which is DLNR cannot list any permits or revocable permits or licenses unless the applicant can show they're not having any negative impact. Now, where it's boiling out of a rock and is a spring, you can probably show that there's not much environmental impact. But when you dry up Iau Stream or Waialeale or Hanalei River or whatever, it's very easy to show that our native O'opu, Opai, and Hihivai cannot get across a dry stream bed any more than a bird can fly without wings. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
They'll never get through that EIS.
Yeah, so we'll see what the outcome is with the EIS. Something to remember too is like when these gentlemen estates are built and resorts are built, is once water is put into potable use, it's really hard to take it back because you're looking at a Department of Health issue. It becomes a health issue. So if there's places on Kauai, you know, for us on Maui, in Lahaina, where we're fighting some water issues there, and we're like, why is it that all these developments are taking place when the aquifer is already suffering? You know, and now for us to go back and open up lo'i, it's going to be even harder because now it's a health issue, right? To take water back. So something to keep in mind too on future development. And forgive me, I'm not anti-development. I'm just anti-greedy development that doesn't truly benefit our people. I think we need to look at smart development and really taking care of our people. I mean, we look at affordable housing and homeless here in Hawaii. We're building more homes for the people that aren't even from here than we are building for our own people. Something's wrong with this system. It's so broken.
You made me think of something, Tiare. Dr. Luciano Minervi from the University of Hawaii has one of the best definitions of sustainable development. He said sustainable development is anything that protects or restores the aina, the ecosystem, and at the same time improves the socioeconomic conditions of the poorest sector of the economy, particularly indigenous people. So that definition defined globally. It's a global definition. It's a good one.
So some of the benefits, so 7 streams in East Maui were restored. Technically not fully restored because to me, restoration isn't true restoration unless the concrete walls and the turning mechanisms that they have in the ditch systems come down because they're still there. But some of the streams have been restored and more so restored because they don't have any use in Central Maui because the sugar plantation closed down, right? So now they have all these empty fields and nowhere to put the water, so the only place to put the water back is in the streams. But what we've seen in the past 6 months is, Uncle Ed will say, is the akule and opelu used to come every 3-4 months. They've been coming in every week.
That's right.
Every week, opai for days. And that's the beauty of stream Mauka to Makai connectivity. It's not only does our aquifers get replenished, our fish population increase, the health of our community increase. For us, I grew up in Lahaina where our streams were dry, and the only time Kohoma stream would flow was during a heavy, heavy rain. And we would go and it was like all pilau and junk, but it was like so exciting. It was like, oh my God, there's water in the river. And it was like an exciting time for us. But now in Kahoma Valley, the water was restored 7 years ago. And for the first time last year, we saw o'opu. So restoration can happen. The ecosystem has, it's resilient. It can come back, but it won't come back unless you guys fight for it. So we'll watch this next.
On September 13th, 2016, there was a flash flood that no one in our lifetime has ever seen before. It took out trees and boulders, it washed away people's backhoes, it washed out the bridge at our house. It was just a lot of water, a lot of pressure coming down, and it widened the river 2 to 3 times, sometimes 4 times as wide in some areas of the river. And what happened here at this spot is that the river used to flow on the north bank. But after the flood, it migrated all the way over to where we're standing now, to the south bank. On the north bank, Wailuku Water Company has their diversion, and they were, up until the 13th, collecting 100% of the stream water into the diversion to sell it off. After the flood, no water was going into the diversion. So they got access and a permit to deal with their property, which is the actual grate and the diversion. But it was pointless and useless to them if no water was going into it.
On October 6th, my friends and I, Blani and Mikiala, we decided to go up to Iao that morning. And when we woke up, we just felt that the valley was calling us. So we went. And when we got up there, we were just like, whoa, it's like the wild, wild west up here. All these machines lined up and down the river, and at Ke Pani Wai alone, there was 4 machines.
I was one of the 3 girls that came up on October 6th and witnessed Wailuku Water Company redirecting Wailuku River back to their main intake.
Wailuku Water Company, in this excavator here, an employee is currently redirecting the river that was flowing here to the right back to the left where their diversions are. And we just got the excavator to stop right now, and his bosses ran away, so we're waiting to talk to somebody, and until then we're going to stand right here.
Although it was illegal and not within the scope of their permits, they had a large excavator in here moving the stream completely over so that the water would flow 100% back into the diversion, and they were successful in that. You can see that big pile of debris there, the rocks and sediment. They had moved everything over this way so the water would be rerouted back into their diversion.
It just really hit me hard because I was seeing big, huge boulders coming out by the tons, being loaded into trucks every 15 minutes. And there was this moment when I was standing, looking into the river by the bridge, and it hit me. And I got this eha feeling, this sadness, that what was happening in the river was not pono. You know, Pohaku to us isn't just rocks, it is our kupuna, and Pohaku has witnessed generations of events in the river. Ke Pani Wai, just the stories, like the damming of the bodies during the Ke Pani Wai battle, and a lot of lives were lost. A lot of our kupuna, from Hana to Kahakuloa, were lost in that valley. Everyone, if you have a lineal connection to Maui, all have ties to this sacred valley. And so when I was looking down in the river and seeing tons of earthen material leaving the river, I felt sadness. I felt at that moment that my kupuna was talking to me. We know a lot of the pohaku that they've taken have already been crushed into gravel, and that hurts. But what they did take out and that is being stored in Waikupu, we're demanding that they return it because that is where they belong.
So Wailuku, of course, comes from the meaning Wai, which of course means water, yeah, that which provides life, the essence of life. And Luku, which has a meaning, of course, which means destruction or to destroy. And it really has to do with, and really tells you how much water can come down this particular valley. And it has a long history of one where, as part of Navai Eha, the four waters of Waikapu, Wailuku, Wai'ehu, and Waihe'e, Navai Eha was said to be the most farmed land, taro cultivation, in all of the islands. And therefore, you would have the ability to really feed many, many thousands of people who are residing on Maui. You know, unfortunately today, most of these waters have been diverted and has affected the amount of taro, you know, is very limited that grows in this area. That's kind of a sad thing to kind of realize, in fact, that the amount of productivity that these lands actually had to provide food for our peoples, you know, today really is one that, you know, barely trickles down into the ocean. And so Wailuku itself starts at the very back of the valley, of course, and flows all the way into the Paukukalo area in Wailuku, Wai'ehu. When you look at that whole valley in of itself, there are many of our stories within that valley of it being a very important place, highly, highly spiritual place. All the ancient and traditional ali'i and the rulers from not just Maui, not just Oahu, but truly from all the islands, the most highest ranking ali'i, their iwi, which is also highly kapu, very sacred, would be taken and protected and secreted in our burial vaults up in the mountains here. It's our version of the Valley of the Kings, where many of our greats ali'i are deposited, and so the mana of their past are still being held in Iao.
The blatant disrespect to our people from our own mayor, Mayor Arakawa, is a prime example of what we're dealing with on Maui. And on October 20th, he went on the radio show and did an interview with Jack Gist, and he said, "This made-up religion, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to have a toothbrush and go through every rock that washes down the river with it? Is everything sacred?" These comments alone just goes to show the type of government we had and the type of disrespect towards our host culture that we continue to deal with.
Over and above all the concerns that a lot of residents have about the behavior of the county along and in Wailuku River, there's also some pretty big questions about how the tax dollars are being spent and if they're being spent appropriately. Two big questions surrounding debris removal and the contract bidding process need to be answered by the county. We know that a lot of the funding was being given with the assumption that FEMA funds were going to repay a lot of the funds that were spent by the county, except that FEMA rules are pretty clear about what is reimbursable and what is not reimbursable. The only debris removal that is eligible for reimbursement is debris that is directly related to the storm. Debris removal from private property is not eligible. It's really important to note that all the land in the riverbed from the bridge up is Wailuku Water Company land. That's private land. And a large amount of the work being done by the county was on that land, hauling material that was not debris. It was pre-existing pohaku, it was soil, it was sediment from the riverbed. So the material being hauled out by the county was the actual riverbed itself on private land. So that tells us that none of that activity is reimbursable by FEMA funding. The next big concern is about the bidding process itself and who got paid these contracts to do the work. FEMA rules say contracts must be competitively bid to successfully receive public assistance grant funding. On the floor of the special council meeting talking about this funding, Councilmember Cochran asked about the bidding process to the department heads, and they said that it wasn't necessary because of the emergency proclamation. So either they didn't understand the FEMA rules or they were being dishonest about the bidding process.
We're taking on that kuleana to Malama Iao, and we are demanding that the county and the state put back the pohaku that they took out.
They took 100% of the water back to their intakes. So what we're trying to do is just make a stand and say, why can't you share it? Mother Nature obviously spoke, and the river changed its course. So what we're doing is just up here, going by hand and trying to just restore flow. We're not trying to take all the water. We're trying to keep the connectivity. They have water going to their intake. We have water going back Mauka to Makai, full connectivity. The other thing too is with their intake, the cement intake with grates. Just being mindful of our native aquatic species, such as the o'oku. It's very troublesome for them to get up Mauka when they're spawning. So what we're trying to do is just keep the river in its natural state as best as possible, and we're just kind of moving pohakus to allow the river to flow and get that connectivity that it so desperately needs. As a Native Hawaiian, we have a right to be in the river. The parks are all closed since the storm. We're practicing our cultural right to be in here, protecting our natural resource, protecting the water, protecting the pohakus, and protecting all the native aquatic species. You can see there's keiki, all community members here, Native Hawaiians, farmers, professors, students, a little bit of everyone just in here giving a little bit of input and work that they can contribute. We're just working with Aloha and bringing our community together to protect what's so important for us and future generations to come. It's not just about what's happening up in the valley. This all matters. The entire river going back down to Pakukalu, Mauka to Makai.
So when we look at Ke Pani Wai today, it's a place of high honor, it's a place of high culture and great traditions, and we should do whatever we can to endeavor to not just protect the sanctity of that place, but educate the rest of our island and community and how important Ke Pani Wai and Iao is for our people. So not just looking at something in the past, but really talking about how we should look at Iao into the future.
There needs to be more real Hawaiian cultural representation in all parts of our government.
We've lost too many sacred spaces, and the time is now. What's happening in Iao is an awakening for a lot of our young generation. The valley is calling us. Was truly an awakening. A lot of people look at Iao as a very important place to them spiritually. People go there for healing. So when the flood happened and they cut off all access to the public, it really kind of hurt a lot of people, and so that place is just so very important to them. And so when this situation happened and we put the kahea out, a lot of people got involved because of that connection that they have to the valley and got involved. The beauty of it is we had so many new faces of people that came, and now they're activated and they show up to meetings, and they've come to realize that their voice matters. All young, 20-year-olds, and it's amazing. They come to all the county council meetings when we put the kahea out. If it's something around fight, they're there. But it's just, follow your na'au, and if you feel like something's calling you and you feel this ancestral connection to this wahi that you need to protect, follow it and go for it and don't be scared. I think right now one of the hardest things for us as Kanaka is maintaining that ancestral connection, because we're so preoccupied and we're so caught up in this Western world where we're like this, and you know, everyone's busy working and everyone's busy just trying to live in this system that we're in. But one of the greatest things that we can give to ourselves and to our children is to maintain and establish a strong ancestral connection to our Aina. Because by doing so, we continue to fight for what is pono, we continue to live a healthy lifestyle, you know, and getting in the lo'i. You know, something that I was just telling my friend Mikiala the other day. I was like, oh, I feel like so stressed out. I'm like being pulled in 20 different directions, blah, 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 blah. And I tell you what, something about the lo'i is when you get dirty and you get that connection in the dirt, it's something that is so powerful. And you feel halua, and you feel the presence, and you feel that kuleana as Kanaka to feed your family or to kokua your friends that are trying to do what is pono and do the lo'i revolution.
Taroki.
Yep, taroki. I'm telling you, it works. But please, yeah, I just encourage everyone here, get involved. Don't be scared. Voice your opinion. Encourage your ohana. Take it, you know, take what's happening on Maui as a realization that justice can happen. It's just a long struggle. It takes time. There is a lot of resources out there for us Kanaka, you know, utilizing Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, Kahea, Earth Justice. There's a lot of organizations that are doing great things, and so if you are compelled to want to start something, there's resources out there, there's community leaders that can kind of guide people in the right way. And I just want to mahalo you guys for this opportunity for me to come, and I hope that I can come and get in the lo'i with you guys one day too, over here on Ko'i.
We do too.
Mahalo.
So, just a reminder, she brought up a really great segue. Tomorrow we're going to be out at the lo'i. So, if you're around, we're going to be bringing people from, speaking of Mount Katarokai, we're going to be bringing people from the Ha'ena side, Halilea, and Wailea side, just to kind of talk about some of the community initiatives that they've been doing and how we can get involved. And then following that, we have what we do it every week, Taroki Tuesday. If you want to learn how to cook ikalo, please come out, and if you want to just hang out, please come out. Usually we cool it before we eat, but I guess people were hungry, so Tiare's here for a little while longer, so if you want to talk story with her, but please, we do have the eye up there for you folks. And one last applause for Tiare.
Pu'ai ke aloha ku kahi ia ka haloala pawehi mai nā lehua mai ko ho'oku ia ka halawa ila mahalo ho e ke akua mahalo ho e nā kapunala ia mahalo me ke alohala mahalo me ke alohala